Hood was the leader of the outlaws, and he was more than a man, he was a legend. No one could say for sure when he first appeared in the forest, or where he came from. Some said he was a nobleman, unjustly exiled by the state. Others a knight who returned from the Crusades to find his property had been illegally confiscated. Others claimed Hood was a mere yeoman, a simple archer who fell on hard times and was forced to seek refuge in the Greenwood. Hood's military skill, both in tactics and combat, brought him the respect of all who joined their group, and the adulation of the common city folk who saw in him a spark of hope that they too might one day be free of the state's oppression. For years, the state had discouraged talk of the outlaws hiding untamed in the forests, and especially the one known as Hood. But merchants and mercenaries are wont to carry news, and men's tongues will always wag in the taverns and workhouses, and so the legend was born. Some old travelers, on encountering the forest dwellers after absences of even years at a time, were surprised to find Hood still alive, apparently ageless, although not unchanged. One of these old-timers, an importer of wine, who passed through the Greenwood 15 years ago, told of meeting a middle-aged archer with a rough accent who liked to sing and play the lute by the campfire. An even older fellow, a cobbler, who often traveled to other cities seeking materials for his fine shoes, claimed to have known Hood over 40 years earlier. This incarnation, according to the cobbler, was an experienced knight of stocky build who spoke in the refined tones of a nobleman and had a great understanding of battle tactics and logistics. Whoever he really was, Hood lived in the forest, slaughtering any soldiers sent to hunt him down and stealing vast amounts of money from the state keeps, which dot the landscape like blighted trees. As the legend grew, and more commoners talked of Hood as if he were a hero, the state placed a huge price on his head, much bigger than any offered before. The people laughed at this because, as the old cobbler said, there had been a bounty on Hood for decades, and no one had yet been able to collect on it. Of course, the fact that so many witnesses reported different versions of the fabled outlaw gave rise to the rumors that Hood was more than one man, perhaps a succession of different warriors who would succeed one another and continue the work of their predecessor, providing a focal point for the downtrodden enemies of the state to rally around. The outlaws denied this idea, suggesting instead that Hood was a single man who could not be killed. One man or many, the legend grew with every year, and every battle fought, every keep raided. Another aspect of Hood's appeal to those who lived in the cities of stone and iron was his camp in the forest. There, it was said the outlaws made use of the trees and rivers and very living rock to provide a secure, comfortable home for any who joined them. Yet it could be dismantled and melt back into the forest in minutes should any state patrol pass too close by. The people would dress in wild clothing of many shades and designs and wield cobbled together yet lethal weaponry. Some of those items were plunder stolen from the state, while yet other pieces may have been handed down from fallen friends. The freedom Hood's followers enjoyed in their Greenwood hideout was spoken of in hushed tones by the downtrodden city dwellers. They would hold clandestine meetings, occasionally finding the courage to protest or even riot against their lot, all the while wondering who the fabled Hood was. Those people saw him as a beacon of light in the darkness, a symbol of hope that their state overlords might be stood against and even perhaps defeated, as so many bounty hunters and soldiers had been when they disappeared into the forest, never to be heard from again. Who then was this seemingly immortal, enigmatic outlaw? Regardless of his origins, it was enough for the simple folk to know that there was a man known as Hood, and by the gods he would bring misery and death to their enemies forever. And then came the news that shattered the commoners' hopes and dreams. Hood was dead. Rumors spread that a bounty hunter had walked into the city one day, carrying the body of a man he claimed was Hood. The tale was scoffed at for a time, for word of Hood's death had been proclaimed before and proven to be a state lie. But after a few weeks, many travelers confirmed there was no longer any sign in the forest of the bold outlaw. Occasionally, a merchant would meet members of Hood's gang, like the massive warrior known as Little John. But never was the charismatic outlaw himself sighted, and the people started to believe that perhaps their hero had finally met his doom. Then the bloody corpses of Hood's comrades began appearing in the city, displayed publicly by the state as gruesome warnings against sedition. It seemed that leaderless and scattered, the outlaws were being hunted down by the bounty hunter, who had now been named the new sheriff. With each passing week and each new mutilated body, the people began to despair. For years they had celebrated this man, this legend, Hood, and taken heart from the fact that at least one person could stand against the hated state. Now, their hope was gone, for if he still lived, Hood would not have allowed his companions to be treated so heinously. The secret meetings and protests, even minor acts of civic unrest that were once inspired by Hood's existence, ceased, and the authorities knew they had finally won. They may not have captured the hearts and minds of the populace, but they had crushed their spirit, and that was all that mattered. Now, though, after many weeks of despair, the dreams of the poor city dwellers had been rekindled as rumors of Hood's return have spread like wildfire. State soldiers have suffered crushing defeats in the forest, according to some, and the giant called Little John had been seen once more in the company of a hooded man who has an unmistakable air of command about him. There was also talk of an ex-state inquisitor with magical powers, and a woman who could appear and disappear like a ghost, all of which added to the myth. The sheriff has vowed to destroy the Hood legend once and for all. But, as before, no one knows for sure who the outlaw captain really is, and there have been conflicting tales. The one now calling himself Hood carries a sinister-looking longbow, which he uses to devastating effect, and two different names, Locksley and Huntingdon, have been heard like whispers on the wind. But this means nothing to the common folk who will know the real Hood by his actions. For now, the people are just glad to believe their hero has returned. To them, Hood has been the lord of the Greenwood for generations, bringing death to those representing the state and aid to those who need it. And surely he will always be there, for he is no mere man, he is a legend. Their legend.